Before we dive in, I want to take a moment to set the stage for today's conversation. If you've ever thought about leaving a traditional W 2 job, starting your own thing, or even just considered it and immediately felt overwhelmed by thoughts like taxes, compliance, LLCs, or even what if I mess this up, this episode is for you. Today, I'm sitting down with Michelle Burke, who is not only my personal tax accountant, but someone who played a huge role in supporting me as I left corporate and started building my own business. Michelle spent decades in the corporate and public accounting world before hitting burnout herself, and then choosing to build a very different kind of practice, one focused on clarity, confidence, and financial health for business owners. In this conversation, we talk about Michelle's own transition out of corporate life, what that in-between year actually looked like, and how she rebuilt her career in a way that feels aligned and sustainable. We also got very practical, breaking down the real basics of starting a business from a tax and compliance perspective, without the fear-mongering or overcomplication that often stops people before they even start. My hope is that this episode helps you feel a little less intimidated, a little more empowered, and reminded you that you don't have to have everything figured out to take the first step. Let's dive in. Welcome to Scale with Clarity, the podcast for entrepreneurs who are building a business and a life that actually feels good. I'm Brooke, fractional CFO, strategist, and mom of three, and I've learned that scaling isn't just about hitting revenue milestones. It's about finding alignment between your big vision and your everyday reality. Each week, you'll hear honest conversations with founders who are redefining success on their own terms. We'll talk about the pivots, the aha moments, and the tough decisions behind the scenes. Plus, the surprising ways entrepreneurship becomes the greatest personal growth journey of all. Whether you're dreaming of leaving corporate, navigating the messy middle, or trying to grow without burning out, this show is here to help you scale with more clarity, confidence, and ease. Because building a business should expand you, not deplete you. Let's scale with clarity together. Hi, Michelle. How are you?
I'm great, Brooke. So good to see you. So happy to be here. Thank you for having me.
Oh my gosh, thank you for coming on too. Michelle, for those listening too, we work together. Michelle does my taxes personally. So gotten to know you personally, but also like such a big help for me leaving corporate, starting a business, trying to figure out all the stuff too. So I'm excited to have you on. And we talked a little bit before we started recording, both to hear your personal story, because it's very similar to those listening, leaving, starting your own thing, but also from an advice perspective too, for a lot of people. I think it scares them around taxes and compliance. And like, that's one of the things that may stop people from pursuing whatever their passions may be outside of their traditional W-2 job. So with that said, can you just start and introduce yourself and what your current role company is?
Yeah, sure. So I'm Michelle Burke. My company is called Health and Taxes. I kind of combine, it's a kind of a play on death and taxes, but in a fun way. And I focus on preparing tax returns for mainly women business owners. It can also be men. It can also be individuals. But I primarily focus on women business owners, helping them, guide them through what's it take to get started, how to get going. But my passion is really working with them, because if we're not focusing on the health, meaning the financial health of our business, if that's something that's scary to us, then, or we don't have the confidence, then our business isn't going to blossom the way we want it to. And so it's really important to just get some clarity, get some guidance, get some confidence around the financial side.
I couldn't agree more. I mean, I've talked about this before, and I think you and I have talked about it as like similar passions, but I mean, a business is a reflection, especially if you're a solopreneur, a one person or a service-based business. It is a reflection of what you want your personal goals to be. It gets you really clear on where you want to head. And I think sometimes people look at numbers, especially in business world, as like more this check the box compliance, I'll do this later. But it really is an indication of what you're prioritizing, where you want the business to go. And honestly, you and I've talked about it. Mike Michalowicz's Profit First, right? 85% of businesses not only fail, but it's because they don't pay themselves. So why are you in business too? So exactly like you said, it kind of encompasses all this. It makes you look at what I say, the important things, but maybe the harder things, which is, why are you in business? What are your real goals in life? What are you working towards? And this is one way to measure against that. So I love that. But Okay, I want to dive a little bit into, I love health and taxes because I know your passion too, or what we've talked about, it's not just numbers. I mean, you have spread your wings too, and we can get in a little later around writing books. And, now we just talked about the Annapolis Film Festival that you're on the committee for, and like just a lot of different passions. Sailing, and my husband too, like he's very big in the sailing in Annapolis. So talk to me about before you left. You used to be in a traditional W-2 job too, as well, didn't you? Were you focused on taxes? Can you talk a little bit about that world and what made you decide to leave and go out on your own?
Yeah, sure, Brooke. So, I have that finance background that you and I both share, but I was in the corporate world for 30 years, 15 years in public accounting and 15 years in the business world, last leading a very large company, leading their tax department. And it was really just burnout, just burnout. You're always kind of doing more, more, more. So I decided I wanted to leave, and I think I've told you, and I've told a lot of people when I did leave, I told everyone I was never doing tax again. I was
So
done.
you reached the burnout point where you're like, I don't want to do anything remotely like what I've been doing for the last 30 years. Was that fear, or would you say you were just running away from it and you're like, I just can't do it anymore? Or was there excitement about the next chapter in your life? Like, what were the
Yeah,
emotions there?
sure. And I had no idea what my next chapter was going to be. I was trying to figure it out. I didn't have any idea. It was definitely running away. Okay, this is done.
Yeah.
And I will say, this was in 2019, and I started my business in 2020. Part of that was because I didn't have the tools that I needed as an executive in business to really replenish myself. I have those tools now. Maybe it would have been a different answer had I had those tools. However, here we are, and I'm happy I'm here.
Yeah.
And I'm happy I took time out to figure out those tools. But I will say, what then drove me, so I'm looking for what is my answer, what's my second thing in
Was that,
life.
yeah, talk to me about, like, let's just pause there for a little bit. So it was about a year, right? You said 2019 you left, 2020 you started what you have now. What did that year look like?
Yeah, so that year looked like, okay, I had savings for that year. So I knew I had some comfort in being able to, what does that year look like? And so I was exploring a lot of different things. And to be honest, I was exploring different things in the health world, kind of related to different health protocols and stuff like that, because the burnout also led to a physical decline
Yeah.
in my health, right?
It's what was important to you at the time too, and you were trying to navigate yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mhm.
However, this also coincides with COVID. And during COVID, people kept reaching out to me, just knowing my background and saying, "Hey, Michelle, I'm starting up a business. Can you help me out? Hey, Michelle, how do I get this PPP money I keep hearing about in my business? How do I get, just all these things?" And I realized, you know what? I have a lot to offer people. It's just on a different scale and on a different level. And I found, you know what? I really do enjoy helping these people. And so that then evolved into creating my own private tax practice and helping people out.
So a couple things there too. We've talked about before, and your story just reinforces this. I think a lot of people minimize their existing network. Like,
Mhm.
let's set aside not knowing what you want to do and running right from, but just if, say, you're clear, you're like, I'm just going to test this out. The idea of jumping from this, I say secure in a really loose term because we know with layoffs and everything, but more of a traditional job where, you're going to something that is like, I don't even know where to start. That's what I hear a lot. I don't even know where I'd start. Your existing network, especially if you've been in the corporate world for 20 plus years, even 10 plus years, is massive. And you don't know what people need or what they're looking for until you start kind of putting those feelers out. And I talked to a guy yesterday who's in a similar boat to where you were before, and just like now in that gap year of like, what is next for me? And it's hard to think about. It's almost like if you've been in that box for, this is what I've done so far. This is the next steps. Like, right, it's the next rung on the ladder of here. And I have to go to a different corporate job that's very similar to that. Like, when you kind of open those, like I think about like a racehorse, that has the blinders, you can't see left and right. When you somehow take those off, it is amazing that what you were running away from was more that box, but some of the things within there actually were fulfilling, and you can do it in a totally different way that actually fulfills you. And that's what I hear from your story.
Yeah, so true. And I think what I would tell people listening to this podcast is really to take a moment and really think about what are your strengths? What have you learned today? How do those strengths, how do they light you up? How can you bring those strengths forward and let go some of the past negativity or whatever? And I think that next encore career or whatever you want to call it really should play to those strengths. And you have the ability, you have the blank canvas to design what that is. But you're so right. All of our prior networking, all of our prior connections, they can all help us. But we need to kind of go internally a little bit and say, okay, what can I do with this? What lights me up? What makes this fun, right? Because part of not wanting a boss anymore, being my own boss, is making sure I say yes to this and no to that. And you and I have talked about kind of boundaries and learning boundaries, and it's something I still am learning. But it's really, you're here now to play to your strengths and offer that back as a service. And I really, really enjoy helping women, especially in business, because of the things we're talking about. Where do I start? How do I get going? There's so many fears around money, the money part of it, and can I manage it? And a lot of my people are creatives. They don't want to look at numbers.
Oh, I know.
They need to know enough. They need to know enough to make informed decisions.
And I think there's two sides of the coin, because I think some people, there's this real fear of leaving, like you said, because I don't like around the numbers aspect, and like what are the very tactical things to do. And those in my mind are so manageable if you find somebody, but what I've found was the real thing that I didn't know was about myself. Like you said, the boundaries and who you want to work with. And so it was this real like kind of flip of the coin of like the things that I was actually scared of. There's so many people out there, and that is so manageable. And we'll get into some of the more tactical stuff around taxes and starting a business, but it's the piece about learning about yourself and who do you want to work with. It was both the biggest personal learnings that I've had, but also almost opening the biggest doors, because I didn't realize I can choose, I can pick, and and so by doing that, again, thinking through that gap year, like you said, and what is a relatively new concept, we'll call it fractional work. That's what I call my stuff. But, gig economy, and what COVID has done has allowed people to kind of step out of that traditional way of working and offer your services, what you truly enjoy doing, in a different, unique way, but you can pick the people you work with. And that's been the biggest unlock and like benefit for me going through this too. So I love that. Talk to me a little bit about, okay, so you left in that year. People started coming out saying, oh, hey, can you help me with this? What was your first steps too? How did you figure out like price? Like what was the biggest difficulty for you, like in those first couple clients? How did that look for you?
Well, I did some research on pricing. Kind of what would a small accounting firm charge? What would a mid-level accounting firm charge? But one of the things is, I come out of public accounting, Big Four public accounting. I'm used to charging at a very high rate.
Yeah.
Well, how does that fit? And so part of it is also kind of learning your worth and what you're offering. So it was definitely a learning. I think I just started networking a lot and just putting out there, here's what I'm doing, here's what I'm looking for. And my first client actually came through me. A bookkeeper and I teamed up, and we offered our services together to work with her. And she was a small business. She had been in She'd been around quite a while actually, but just needed that extra discipline actually around her process because numbers weren't something she enjoyed. And then my business really, it was a combination of getting myself out there in networking groups, and then
Yeah.
also everything comes through me through referrals, through friends, those connections I knew before from clients as I'm servicing them, recommend more clients to me. I put a website out there to exist and show that I'm
Yeah.
here. It's actually getting vamped right now after 5 years because I'm more clear on what I'm offering and what I'm doing.
I love that. And have you seen, I always like to ask this, maybe it's a loaded question because it's our leading question, I should say, but I always like to ask, how has your definition then of success changed? Like since you've left, and this is interesting too, talking to you and myself too, coming from a finance background, but is it still financially driven? Is it a number of clients driven, or what is fulfillment to you now as you look at, coming into 2026 and planning for the year?
That's a really good question, Brooke, because we are numbers people. So we're always thinking
That's my
clients,
KPI.
numbers,
You're right. Yeah. Uh-huh.
bottom line. And that is there for me. That will always still be there for me. But I am really kind of expanding my service and creating right now this community for women to come in and learn kind of some of these skills and come together with other women in the same place to talk about tax and business and finance and all the things. And I say that kind of to pivot off what you were saying, but because of that is I'm looking to be more filled up and fulfilled by what I'm doing than just like preparing someone's tax returns. I can only do so much that way. How can I make a bigger impact? How can I serve more people? In the doing of preparation of tax work, I can only do so much. But if I give in a bigger way and talk to women and educate women and go that way, and that also that's the most rewarding part when I'm helping people. So
You think, yes. So as I said, it's a leading question because obviously I agree with this. But you said this earlier, and it reminded me in the conversation I alluded to before that I had yesterday with someone. They asked, what's the first, like, how do I even begin to think about what I would want? And two things come to mind. You mentioned values, exercise, and just really getting clear on like what's really important to you. And as you're saying now too, I hear a lot of people say, I just want to replace my salary. That's kind of their KPI of success when you go out on your own, because it's just what you know is like what your financial needs are. We can talk all about, well, you're not going to need as much money if you don't need to pay for, and daycare. There's very different requirements of a different lifestyle. But I also think I've seen so many people reach that goal and however fast it took them or slow. And that's not actually, you're just recreating the life you had before.
yeah.
And so then you get there and you say, oh my gosh, I'm still stressed out because I'm, making sure to hit this revenue number, but I'm a team of one and I have all these clients and I'm overwhelmed. And if you really sit back and think, do you need that versus what are my real values? And that's what I'm hearing full circle from you right now is it's community and it's impact and it's bringing people together and feeling really fulfilled. And so if you can start from those of what's really important to you and see where it's missing, honestly, like you said, you ran from the job as I did too, because it was just burnout. There might be some aspects of that you actually love. And so it's really starting from that. So you're not running away from something, but you're kind of running towards what is more fulfilling. And it's that pause, I think, of like really trying to figure out what is really important to me at the end of the day.
Yeah, I wholeheartedly support that. And you can do that pause in your current position before you make the transition. You don't have to have the gap year, It if we focus solely on I'm just going to be kind of brutally honest. If we focus solely on, I have to replace my salary, it really puts so much pressure on ourselves to replace that salary. And I do think it's in our minds, and
Yeah.
I did it, and it was overwhelming at
Yes.
first. And the
Yep.
reality is, if you're starting a business, you're right. Some people jump out of the box, they get there. The reality is it takes 2 to 5 years to replace your salary
Yeah.
if that's what
Yeah.
you're doing. And I just want
Yeah.
to put that out there to be honest with people
Yeah.
because that's my
Yeah.
experience. Yes, some
Yeah.
people. So if you can figure out a way to approach it differently to, just don't how can I serve? What's the best way I can serve? And how can I do that now?
Yeah. Yeah.
How can I just jump into that? Um, Maybe you'll get there faster, but I think you kind of have to I think that's natural to focus on
Yeah.
that metric. But I think
Yeah.
on some level, we need to just let that go and really focus on how can I bring in money and how can I ramp this up?
Yeah. I agree. I mean, two things for there too is it, it by solely focusing on that as a metric, you bring yourself wherever you go, as like what did I say? So you're just recreating the lifestyle you had before, which led you to being unhappy. And what most entrepreneurs I've talked to, what has taken them the longest to get to whatever financial metric they eventually decide that they need or want without stress is figuring themselves out. And
Mhm.
so if you can, that's the shortcut is focus on what is filling you up, because what's happening is you're figuring out different clients in a slightly different service line. And then how do I operationalize that? And oh, that's not exactly what I want to do. And that's the pivots and the learnings. Once you get to like that sweet spot of I love doing this and these are the clients that I like, then you figure out the marketing and the network and the referrals, like you say, they just come. Then it's that part of figuring that out, especially the traditional, the corporate to solopreneur path, because that's historically that has been lost when you've been in your job, and so it's finding that again. So, I love your story and thank you for sharing that. So let's jump a little bit to then the tax and number side, very specifically for people who are thinking about this. We talked about this is, I think, a lot of people's fear is you haven't had to worry about some of these things. It's these compliance. Will I get myself in trouble? What are some things to talk about? Do I need to, I also hear from a lot of people hiring so many people and lawyers like to come up with all these documents. Can we simplify it a little bit and say for the person looking to leave their W-2, who's thinking about, I got to create an LLC and I got to pay my taxes. Like, what are some of the top things that they should be thinking about? Or let's start there. What are some of the top things that they should be thinking about, like step 1 through 3?
Yeah. So the most important thing that you can do, just stepping away and stepping into the business, is setting up an LLC. Now, I'm not a business attorney. I can't give legal advice, but as a tax advisor, I will say an LLC is really it's a legal vehicle to separate the person from the entity. And it separates the legal liabilities from a person and an entity. So it creates an entity that is, you just have to start, it gets an EIN, which is the same as a social security number. So setting up that LLC, and if you're just going to be the sole owner of that LLC, it's fairly simplistic. You go out to your state, you set up that LLC, you can get assistance through a business attorney, or you can get assistance online. Sometimes the state offers programs to help get you set up. But just get that entity set up. So figure out what you want to call
Yeah.
it, set up your LLC. You'll reach out to the IRS. It's a simple form to get an EIN.
Mm-hmm.
Once you have those two things, set up a bank account for that
Mm-hmm.
entity. The biggest place people get in trouble is they do everything as their person and they are mixing up incomes and revenues and expenses between their person and their business. So I highly recommend separating those from the beginning. It doesn't have to be 100% perfect. You can spend, I buy my internet through my personal name even today. There still can allocate a percent of that to my business. So it doesn't have to be 100%, but get in the habit that 95% of the stuff are coming through that business and you're keeping a separate set of book and records. Your book and records
Yeah.
can be simple. You can put them on an Excel spreadsheet at first. Brooke has a tool. I have a tool. There are tools out there to just keep it simple, because some people dive into QuickBooks and get scared and don't have the money maybe to start a bookkeeper.
Yeah.
So just keep it simple. Keep the pluses and minuses. And then also, if you do something on your personal side, you had to pay for something, or you put cash into the business or out of the business, just track that. So try to keep things simple would be my.
So on that tip, thank you. So I'm going to reiterate. Think of what your name is, and it can be literally your name, LLC. I'm Brooke K Consulting LLC. Create that LLC in the state that you're doing business in. Set up your EIN, then open your bank account, because to open the bank account under that name, you're going to need to come with that EIN. So I want to talk about mindset around this, though.
Yeah.
Why I tell my clients this is so important. And you already alluded to this. If you're a solopreneur and you're a team of one, it's going to roll up to your own tax filing.
Yes.
Not only keeping it separate from a legal perspective, if you're doing, in our case, doing numbers, you want to get insurance around that. So there's certain business insurance that falls into that. But so many people, you don't pay yourself, especially if you're a service provider, as a lot of people I talk to, and we are. It can get really pricing can feel like, oh, I can just help you out and then I'll do it, or maybe I won't, charge a little bit, or it can get really squirrely in that terms. And when you start thinking about your business as a separate entity and something that you can look at as their profit, it really it separates it from your own identity and from your own, like, helping people out. Cause I just I'm a friend to them, and, we used to work together, and it really helps you start to be like, this is a business that I need to run. And if I'm not profitable, this is a hobby, and I should be doing, I would rather be painting or gardening, or I don't know, whatever, like, I don't know, whatever the thing is with, friends. And so for me, it's been a mindset thing too, I think, as much as compliance purposes.
I agree. So much of it is a mindset thing. And so I encourage anybody to just make sure they take a little time to understand your worth and what you're providing someone, because to me, helping someone with tax advice is so simple. But why is it so simple? I have a master's degree and an undergraduate and a master's degree in accounting. I have 30 plus years in accounting. It's very simple, but there's a worth to that.
Yeah.
Right. And a worth to providing that, and a worth to knowing the difference, So make sure you realize there's worth to what you're providing, and that'll help over time and with your pricing and stuff as well.
And I think that's interesting. That's a really good, when you think about what could I do after, or what would I want to do, the things that come easiest to you are often the things you should be providing. We always minimize the value to others because it's easy, but thank you for reiterating that. You've been doing it for forever. It's your natural skill set. You've put the money into an education and the background. And, we can talk about, finance and accounting, which is a very specific skill set, but even more general, even if you weren't a, say, project manager, but you found yourself having to do that and you're really organized or something, like the things that come easy to you, even if they weren't your specific job title, think about those. Those are the things that are like people need. So yeah, don't minimize your worth and the things that you enjoy and come easy to you, because it is so valuable to others. It's just finding those people. Okay. How about taxes? So we could go 1,000 ways, but very specifically, I think that's a fear. It's always been handled. It's come out of your paycheck historically in a W-2 job. And then come April, you file your taxes. What changes, or does anything change when you go on your own? What do you need to think about?
Yeah. So a couple things. One is, you mentioned earlier, when you're a single member LLC, the taxes are prepared on your individual return. It's a special Schedule C with your income and losses, but it all flows into your personal return. So let's focus on that for a minute. So your net income, all your revenues minus your expenses, that net amount is fully taxed in that year. whether you pay yourself or whether you just draw from that amount, $1 or all the money, the full amount is going to be taxed. People need to think about a couple things. One is, what is your tax, what tax bracket are you in currently? And so you may be married filing jointly, you may be single, kind of what's your tax bracket and what kind of net income are you bringing? Because that's going to be subject to income tax. But the
Yeah.
one thing people really misunderstand coming from W-2 to business is the self-employment taxes, similar to Social Security. So you have to, as a business owner, your net income is subject to 15.3% self-employment tax. That is, historically on your W-2, you paid in and withheld your
Yep.
7.5 or 7.65% of Social Security, and your business paid the other half. So it's
Yeah.
a big number when you come into the business
Yep.
of paying that 15.5%. So back to, you briefly mentioned profit first. A thing to do is to put money aside
Yeah.
as you grow your business for taxes.
Yeah.
As you grow in the first year, depending if you're already paying estimated taxes, which if you alone or you and your spouse are just W-2s, it's unlikely you're paying
Yeah.
estimated taxes. But if your spouse has a business, you may be used to doing estimated taxes. And so in the first year, you might have to pay quarterly estimated
Yeah.
taxes. So typically on the payroll, taxes are withheld, and it makes it really easy.
You don't have to think
Now
about it.
you've got to
Yep.
put a little discipline, and this
Yeah.
is where your CPA and your tax accountant can help you with that, and even your bookkeeper can help you put so much aside so it doesn't come as a surprise. And setting, learning what that looks like and how to prepare for that.
Yeah.
One other final caution is, a lot of people in their networking or out coffee, someone will be like, "Oh, you have to be an S corp or you have to be this." Don't jump to things. Ask for some advice. S corps are a great way, and their main thing is to reduce Social Security or the self-employment tax, but there's a lot of costs to come up with it. So you don't need to be an S corp out the gate. Usually, there's an income level before it makes sense to incur the additional cost. It's a separate tax filing. It's making payroll.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of costs that come with it before you make that jump. So yeah.
Very helpful. I think, okay, so clearly a lot of nuances and why I'll say it's important to reach out to someone like you. But at a high level, some things to think about if you're thinking of leaving is, one, setting up that separate structure. So the LLC and the bank account, so you can keep your business expenses versus your personal expenses separate. Secondly, is starting to think about more of a quarterly tax payment that you will eventually need. Of course, there's thresholds and there's where you were before, and there's so much nuance, but to get in that mindset so that you're not caught off guard year end thinking, oh, I'm going to have similar, I'm not making as much, or I'll have a similar tax payment as last year. Because when you do go out on your own, not only is it due throughout the year, depending on your limits, but also it's going to be potentially a different amount. You don't want to be caught off guard in the cash flow perspective, which, by the way, is something to think about in your pricing. If you're thinking about, oh, I used to charge this in my as I was a consultant and this was my hourly rate, that is more when you are on your own. So make sure you think about that in your profitability for yourself.
Very, very good point. I'll just stress that. Like, your insurance is coming out, all these things are coming out of your W-2. Definitely you have to gross up and have a higher amount because you are responsible for those taxes at the end of the
Yes.
year.
Yeah. And it's worth it. And all of the things we can dig into, because obviously your company was paying insurance and stuff. So your value to them was higher than what you were just getting in your W-2, in your pay stub, your net pay stub. So think about that when you go out on your own. You need to include that. The last thing I want to say, and then I'd love for people to hear how they can reach you, is I hear a lot of people, again, if you're not already, if finance isn't your background, it's scary going out on your own. And I hear a lot about who do I need to hire? What do I need to do? It's just kind of overwhelming. And where do I even start? And I just want to put a plug in from from my perspective and those that I've worked with, that usually the right progression is clearly, Michelle, you have a ton of expertise, your background, and what you're doing now. I often tell people and hear it told back to me that the first hire is often someone like yourself. When you go out on your own, you may have your own CPA doing taxes for you in your W-2 job, but you should talk to a tax accountant who can help you think through these things and determine if you need to do your quarterly filing and even give you advice, as Michelle's just talked about, specific to your situation around LLCs and just some of that stuff. They can just talk you through it. That is usually the first finance team member that business owners hire. And so glad what you're doing. You talked about service providers too. So we can get back to how they can work with you, Michelle. But then often that then progresses to a bookkeeper, as you mentioned. Sometimes then tracking it yourself and in an Excel spreadsheet, once your revenue and your clients get to a certain number, that can get overwhelming and something that people just do not like doing. So then the bookkeeper often is like the second finance team member, we'll call it, that businesses bring on. And then lastly is then some of the services that I provide around fractional CFO stuff. So that would be kind of the last person. It's like when you get to a certain amount and you're looking forward looking, you want forecasts and projections and certain things to like round out the team. So just as you're thinking about it, it's recommended to at least talk to someone like Michelle, and not because it's overly complicated, but just so you can make sure you're checking the boxes and you're thinking about the right things. So with that said, Michelle, where can people find you? Where
Yes,
where are you?
Yeah, just a quick comment. I full-heartedly agree with everything you just said. And sometimes just having that person to reach out to just builds your confidence in what you're doing and as a check, So yes.
Totally agree.
So my business is health and taxes. The best way to reach out to me is through my website at healthandtaxes.net. It is being revamped right now, as I mentioned, so it's going to have a new look in the next couple weeks, but that's still the place to go.
I love that.
Maybe revamped by the time this podcast comes
Yeah.
out.
Yeah.
That's the best way to reach me. I have on there links where you can schedule a 30-minute learning session with me, where we can talk about your business, how I might be able to help you with your business. I have very limited spots where I'm taking on new clients, especially for the 2025 tax year. I
Yeah.
pretty much have my client base in line for that. But what I do want to let people know is I'm creating a community through school, the SKOOL, through school, and it's going to really focus on women in business who want to find a community to come together to get more clarity and confidence. And it's going to be educational. It'll be there to ask your tax questions so you don't feel intimidated. It's talking to other women that are doing the same thing. And I will be having, once I get that up and going, I will be having guests such as Brooke coming on to share their expertise in like, what is a financial projection? Why do you need it? And it's just really going to be based on education to help women be more successful and feel less scared about the things that they're doing. So just reach out to my website. You can also email me directly at mburke at healthandtaxes.net. Let me know if you're interested in my school community, and I will put you on my list to notify you when that comes live.
I love that, Michelle. I'll put all of this in the show notes. I think just like we talked about earlier, it's the community, it's the quick questions, it's not feeling overwhelmed because it doesn't have to be overwhelming. So all of that is wonderful. I'll put your website in the show notes, the link to just a quick educational session, which I think in the meantime, before your community is up and running, is an amazing resource that people should leverage. And then obviously the link to the school when it's live. So thank you for being on here. Thank you for sharing both your story, but also demystifying a bit around numbers and compliance and just the fear that some people have on going out on their own and what that would entail. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Brooke. I think you and I are very aligned in wanting to help women in business and just help them find success faster.
Couldn't agree more. So thank you. Thank you.